So Mitch and Pat, you're the only two. Oh, here's Crislin. Hi, Crislin.
Hi, Diana.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Just, another day.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry for the confusion earlier today.
Oh, no, that's okay. And I apologize. I should have put in there that those were links.
No, it just wasn't. I'm used to seeing those little icons.
I know.
When it's up. And so then I didn't see them and I was like, oh, shoot. And then I went to the website and they were on the website. And so, but I know you said that they are still on the website, but they're just not.
Yeah, it's just, we're just trying to clean things. Obviously, I didn't do it. Yeah. That's on my agenda. Just to try to clean up all those policies.
Yes, I know. It's an undertaking.
Yeah, and they're all numbered so differently right now, so it doesn't make sense to have. Yeah. Anyway, so my apologies for that confusion.
Oh, no problem. Well, like I said, I didn't even see him. So, but yeah. All right. Just getting everything up here. How's Patrick doing?
For me?
How's Patrick doing?
Oh.
I am living the dream.
Oh, Patrick, I'm so sorry about your dad.
Thank you. I have to say, it was very much a blessing.
Yeah.
He had been struggling for probably 7 years with really, really poor health.
Yeah.
And when I say poor health, it wasn't like he was getting a cold. It was stuff that was putting him in the hospital. So,
yeah.
The end was peaceful and quick.
Well,
and
I'm glad. I'm glad for him, and I'm glad for
family. He was at home with his family. And he and my mom had been married for 65 years, 66 years. And so, they got to spend the last few days together. So that was nice.
That's very nice. So in the end, it was peaceful, and that's good.
Yes.
Good. I'm sorry, though. It's still no fun, I'm sure, to go through.
No, it's not. But
yeah. All right.
Well, is Joe joining?
I'm here.
I don't know. Patrick.
Joe is there. Okay, so Joe is on. So he's number 4.
Okay.
So you have Mitch, Pat, and Joe.
Okay.
So.
And do we have any community people calling in on this, Diana?
Not on this one. Not that I'm aware of. It should be up.
Yeah, I thought it was posted.
Yep, it was posted, and I don't see it live yet on YouTube, but it should be coming up here shortly.
Okay.
And Diana, I think I just got into the.
Oh, yep, I see you. Yep, perfect. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate that.
Yeah. It only 12 attempts at my password to get in.
Oh.
I was worried I was going to freeze it.
Okay. Oh. All right, we are live.
Okay. All right. So I think we need to, I'll call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting of the New Berlin School Board's Finance Committee. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public by posting the agenda on the district website and providing to New Berlin City Hall for public posting. Copies of the agenda were forwarded to the Waukesha Freeman, the Waukesha Now, and the Journal Sentinel, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. So shall we, Diana, can you just call the roll so we can establish who's in the meeting?
Sure, I can. Let's see. Well, Crislin.
Yep, I'm here.
Ms. Wondricek. Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Ms. Crosby.
And Amy is not here, but she emailed ahead that she had a family emergency to deal with, so she will not be joining us tonight for this committee meeting. And I believe also present on the call are Joe Garza, our superintendent, and Patrick Miller, our CFO. And Diana Hansen, of course.
Yes.
Okay. So let's first look at the March 23rd minutes. Mitch, since you and I are the only two committee members, but Patrick, I'd also like your input on this. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yes.
And Mitch, did you see the minutes?
I'm trying to get on them right now, but it does not seem to be coming up.
Okay. Well, take a minute to do that. Patrick, did you have a chance to see the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. I just had one comment on the minutes, and I don't know that this is a problem with the minutes or if it's a problem with my memory. So I'm trying to figure out, when we looked at policy 3109, which was our fund balance policy, I don't have in the minutes that we took any action on it. I believe in my notes that we just made one change, which was because in our current policy, it refers to a financial director. And we decided that for consistency's sake, we would change that to the superintendent's designee, which would likely be the CFO. So Mitch, is that your recollection, and Patrick, yours as well?
I would say that it should have been superintendent or designee.
Okay. And then, so that's just something I think we need to just clean up under our policy discussion later in the agenda, because we probably should move it with that change to be presented to the board for a first read so that we can make that change to that policy and file that one. Does that make sense?
Actually, Crislin, isn't that the one that's on the agenda for tonight?
No, it is not.
I thought it was.
Let me pull it up here.
If you look at for the regular board meeting?
For the full board meeting.
Oh,
It is on for it's on for approval tonight.
Okay, so if it's on for approval, then we should probably reflect it in the minutes that we moved it, because apparently we moved it for approval at that meeting. That's what I was confused about. You see what I mean, Diana?
So we had this is Joe, we had a first read at the last board meeting.
On 3109, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crislin, it's actually, when you talked about your policies, I think it was 3109 and 6235 are in essence the same policy. The 3109 is our current SD&B policy.
Right.
And the 6235 is what is the kind of our new, as we move towards the Neola numbering, is it just in essence replaces it. And they were virtually the same except for that superintendent designee verbiage.
Okay. So we don't need to do anything with that on this committee meeting, because it was but I think that we need something in the minutes that reflects that we moved it to the board, don't we?
Yeah, I can change that. I just say that it was forwarded to the board for your last meeting. It was presented as a first read. Yeah, I can change that.
Yeah, if you could, that would be great, Diana, because I think that I was confused about whether we had actually moved it. And I want to make sure that that's clear in the minutes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much. So that's the only change. Yeah, so I think that that's the only change to the minutes. Mitch, have you been able to open the minutes to look at them?
Yep, I'm looking at them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so no
Nothing
other
else.
changes from you, Mitch?
No.
Okay. Okay, so that's our minutes. So then we just want to move on to the financial reports that Patrick sent to all of us. And Patrick, I sent you an email only a couple hours ago with a list of questions that I had.
Mhm.
I'm guessing you didn't have a chance to look at those, which is fine. But when you have a chance, if you could respond to the committee with the questions that I had.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I didn't get it to you earlier.
Nope, not a problem. You're giving me the time to get back to the committee, so that works for me.
That'd be great. So this balance sheet, though, Patrick, that you sent to us, I think that this is a new form that a new report that we're getting, right?
Yes, my hope is that in the next few months, every month, I'm going to be able to add an additional report toward our essentially report goal in Skyward as we're working through kind of the development of these. I had another report that I was hoping that I would be able to share with you. It's just I need to work with Skyward to get an additional description on there. Otherwise, you're going to need to do some homework on the woofer manual in order to understand it. So I don't want to do that. But
well, I appreciate that.
I think the balance sheet format that we're getting out of Skyward is it's a lot more simplified, and I think it's easier to understand.
Sure. So would you mind just kind of taking me through this balance sheet so that I know what I'm looking at? I mean, I'm seeing like debit columns and credit columns, and then 0 beginning balance, 0 ending balance. I'm not sure why it's formatted that way. Could you just kind of explain that to me?
Correct. Essentially what we're showing you in the balance sheet is, and it's not so much the beginning balance, debit, credit, and ending balance, understanding those. It's seeing that with our assets, our liabilities, and our equities in each account, what you want to see in the balance sheet is a beginning balance and ending balance of 0. Okay. And so what the balance sheet is showing you essentially is that all accounts and all activity that's either debiting that particular account, that would be adding money to it, or crediting that account, that would be taking money away from it, is resulting in a balanced account. The balance sheet that we had prior to this with Alio was, I think, probably about 12 pages long, and it had a lot of white noise in it. And so in this balance sheet, you're just looking at what typically comes in a balance sheet, and that's assets, liabilities, and equity. So as you go through, for example, the funds that we have activity in, and that's what we limited this to. For example, you're not going to see a Fund 39 balance sheet because we don't use Fund 39. So why should I give you a balance sheet for that particular fund? So you're seeing all of the funds that we typically have activity in from month to month. Our general fund, the special revenue trust fund, is like donations that we would get, or activity accounts that are, they're not controlled by students. Those would be like Fund 60 accounts. And those are all liability accounts. So these are funds that, for example, if we get a special donation that we need to spend over time, it's going to go in that special revenue. Then you see special education, Fund 38 debt service, food service, and then the community service fund.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. So all of these accounts, the ones that are limited on this report, are the only accounts that we're using right now, correct?
That's correct. These are the accounts that have regular monthly activity.
Okay. But when we get to an end of the year balance, at the end of a fiscal year balance, fund balance, once we close the year out, I will put together a full balance sheet of every single account that, whether or not there's been activity or not throughout the year, just so that you have that, at least once a year, you're looking at a full balance sheet. Okay, that'd be great. Mitch or Joe, do you guys have any questions for Patrick on this?
This is Joe. I do not. And then we will have Patrick get back to you on the items you had requested, Kristen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Joe, and thank you, Patrick, for doing that.
the next report that I'm hoping to roll out to you is going to be a monthly activity report. That's going to be done by object. And what that's going to show you is a monthly year-to-date activity compared to the budget. And
ooh, that's great.
The only thing that's going to be difficult with this particular report is the way we did our financing in the past. We would record if we had expenses that would occur on a monthly basis. Roger would record those all up front in the beginning of the year, and so it's difficult to see how your monthly activity tracks throughout the year. So this is a really great report when we get 3 or 4 years into using Skyward, because you're going to be able to look back and see how each object account is tracking compared to the last fiscal years as a percentage. It's a really, but we have to start to build our own longitudinal data before it's really going to be as robust as it can be.
Sure. So Patrick, on that report, that monthly activity report, I know you said it would show the total, like the year to date and as compared with the budget. Will it show it like as a percentage?
Yes. It'll show a dollar amount that was budgeted.
Okay.
It's going to show a dollar amount that has been expended year to date. So it's going to include all the months up to the month that the report is printed for.
Okay.
And it's going to show what percentage of the budget has been expended so far.
Great.
In the fiscal year. And so as we progress through the year, you're going to be able to see, you're going to be able to compare prior years to our current.
Okay, that'd be great. Sounds good, Patrick. All right.
There's a lot of background noise. I don't know if he's around.
Okay, so moving on to the Skyward conversion. Patrick, I know you just said that you're going to be, I know at the last meeting you indicated you were going to be adding a report hopefully every month. So we already talked about that, and the next month we're hopefully going to see the monthly activity report. Mm-hmm. Any other updates you have to give us about the Skyward conversion?
Just real briefly, I can tell you that the final conversion to our live data went very well.
Oh, great.
There's still some things that we need to clean up in the account. It's the account code crosswalk. So the crosswalk from our previous 20,000 account codes to our current like 9,000 account codes. So there was a lot of crosswalking that had to happen where you were taking a larger number of funds. I'm going to say, like, for example, 10 funds, and we converted those or condensed those into one. So we're still going through and doing some of that cleanup, but the final pass with all of our financial data, I think, went very well, and we're continuing to go through the process. So the next thing is for us to start building budgets within the software suite, and we're also working on getting things in the human resource suite cleaned up. That's going to make, for example, salary adjustments in the future will be a lot easier for us to manage because we have everything is integrated and talking well together. So it's going very well.
Great, that's good to hear. Mitch, do you have any other questions for Patrick about the Skyward conversion?
We had some milestones before about some of the other software that we'd be dropping off. And I don't remember the exact dates and what other software. Do we have updates on that too?
So we did, because of the the issues with essentially our office shutdown, very limited personnel. I did make a request for Alio to add an additional month of service, just so that we had some extra time to go through our crosswalk, which I was able to negotiate that additional month at a 50% discount with them. So, but as of the end of April, we were going to end at the end of March with Alio. We're going to end now on April 30th. We will no longer be doing anything in Alio. One of the issues that we are we're going to have to address with an additional product for a limited number of years is with our electronic document storage.
Is that where we had all the that had like semicolon names? It was a bunch of numbers and gibberish.
Yes, and the issue that we have is in the past we have been taking personnel files and scanning them into this Alio document product. And once the documents were in there and we verified that the documents were in there, then those personnel files were shredded. Now that we're moving away from Alio, we can't just lose that product because we don't have any backups to those personnel files. And so what we're going to have to do for a couple of years is purchase an additional product called SoftDoc, and they will be the Alio Content, which was their document store or their document program, is owned by SoftDocs. So they're going to be converting them into a new platform that we will then be able to move them off of that platform and then have a digital copy of them. It's gonna take some time to go through that whole process. It's going to be a very hands-on process.
Okay. Are we doing any of that now with kind of everything going on that we have, with people not having as much work to do? And I know we've got a few people laid off and everything, but I didn't know if we had staff to work on that now.
We're not working on that now because we're negotiating with SoftDocs with the conversion contract. Their first pass at a proposal to us, I did not like at all because they wanted us to do a 5-year contract, and we went round and round with them, Brandon and I. So they're coming to us with another proposal for a 3-year contract because I don't think it's going to take us 5 years to do this conversion. But
Gotcha.
a year-to-year contract is not going to be cost effective for the district. So I'm just trying to land somewhere in the middle so that we have enough time to get it done, and I'm trying to save as much as I can by negotiating a slightly longer contract. Because it is going to take, there are about 250,000 documents in that program right now. So
Okay.
it's just going to take some time.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Patrick, so on the other hand, Patrick, what have we been able to save thus far, though, to date?
So right now, we've left Kronos, which is about a $35,000 a year savings. Once we get we prepaid for the installation for Skyward. So once we just get on an annual annual license renewal for them. That savings over Alio is probably going to be about $10,000 a year. And then once we get rid of this document storage, that's going to be another probably, I'm going to conservatively guess $18,000 a year. So there were
all for Alio.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, our goal is to get through those 250,000 documents as quickly as we can. And we're going to put them into Skyward because Skyward's document storage is included in their suite. It's not an additional cost. And right now, for example, with all of our new employees, we're putting their data into Skyward. With all of our accounts payable, we're scanning those documents into Skyward as well. So, for example, when I go to look up an invoice in Skyward, I can not only see the accounting for that particular invoice, but I can actually pull up the invoice and see a digital scan of it with 2 clicks of a mouse.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions about the conversion? Okay, so let's move on to our policy discussion. We've got 3 policies on the agenda for tonight. And I'd like to go over, let's take a look at the first 2 shorter ones before we go to the last one, which is the longer one. Let's look at 3326 if we can.
That's Amy.
Pardon me?
That's Amy's policy.
Yes, it was. That was on her list. So, but that one, I actually took a look at this, and I think that I actually had a sort of offline discussion with Diana about it, and I think that this policy, I'd like your input, Mitch and Patrick, on this, but I think that this policy is probably a bit superfluous now that we've got the new purchasing policy. What are your thoughts on that?
All bills and claims are subject to board approval. That's very overreaching.
Well, and it's not really what we said in the purchasing policy, but it's over the same material. So that's why I'm wondering if we even need this policy. So
if I could give you a little bit of business office history in this.
Yeah, that'd be great, Patrick.
Years and years ago, it was a regular practice in school districts that usually once a week, the treasurer of the school district would actually come into the district office and review and initial invoices before they were paid. And so they would actually come in and there'd be a basket full of invoices that they would review and sign off on. And then if there were any invoices that came in, like the second paragraph, that were out of schedule that we needed to pay, then those would be approved by the board after they were paid at the next scheduled meeting. If you look at the dates on here, this policy was originally adopted the year that I was born, and I'm old.
So what, 25 years ago?
Yeah, about that, Yep, flattery will get you everywhere. And it was reviewed in 1995. And again, back in those eras, the board did a lot more with actual physical signatures on checks. What is more common now is that school districts will do things the way we're doing them now. as long as it's an invoice that is included in this budget, we approve those in the business office as, you know, invoices that were approved in the original budget. And then if it's something, for example, like when we are approving the expense for the Orchard Lane parking lot, that's something that's outside of the regular budget. And so we'll go through a different process for that. It'll get board approval. We'll say this was not included in the budget, but here's where we're going to get the money from, and you know, and that's the way we would go about that. And you're correct, Crislin, that in our purchasing policy, it sort of eliminates the need for this detailed of a policy. So
thank you for that, Patrick. That's very helpful. So Mitch, based on that, what are your thoughts? I think that we should probably move that this policy be deleted from our policies. That would be my recommendation, but I think that since you and I are the majority of the committee right now, we would have to agree about that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with the only thing a little bit is the vendor shall comply with timeliness established by the business office. I don't know that it really has any teeth, because I don't know that our policy has anything to, vendors don't have to follow our policy per se. The policy is more for us to enforce, but I don't know if there's anything that we're missing from the other piece is out of schedule payments are authorized by the superintendent or designee. I don't know if any of that is included in our current purchasing policy and if we're missing any of that. So I guess if Patrick could just go through that and figure out if there's anything else that we need to take from here and add into there. But otherwise, I don't see a whole lot in here that value add.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As I went and just did some spot checking in school districts with this particular policy, there are a few school districts that still have this policy in, and I think it's mainly because they had one, so they feel like they should keep it. There are many districts that have just eliminated this because, you know, just the way we do purchasing now and the way the board approves invoices now has changed so much. Probably about, I would say, 3/4 of the districts that I spot checked today have eliminated this.
And I think this is a kind of a common trend looking across them. For example, like the one I looked at was mileage reimbursement. And then we also have a staff reimbursement for meetings and conferences. And I think we probably can whittle down some of these by combining one or more of these into one policy.
Mm-hmm. And some of these some of the things that used to be in policy are now found in employee handbooks. And so there's really no need for them to be in policy if it's going to be in a handbook. As a matter of fact, organizations like WASB and our attorney Von Briesen and Roper will discourage districts from having things in both policy and handbook because of the, you know, for fear that if you change one, you forget to change the other, and now you've got a conflict.
That's actually a good point. I don't know what we have in terms of mileage reimbursement and like business travel in our handbook. Is there anything in there about that?
We have procedures in our district as far as how we reimburse. It's not in policy. It's just in office procedure, simply because then it makes it easier. If we want to make a change to that, it makes it a lot easier to make that change.
Yeah, but I'm talking more in terms of if I'm a teacher or I'm an administrator booking travel, where do I go? What's the Bible I use to know what I can spend, what I need to supply with my reimbursement stuff? Do they use the handbook or do they use these policies on the?
There's a travel procedure in the staff intranet that gives them instructions on what they need to do for approvals and you know, if they're asking for reimbursements, and those are all things that I'm going to work on changing because I would rather send a staff person with a procurement card as opposed to having the staff seeking reimbursements.
Okay.
I don't like.
No, I
think
agree with that. But even within there, like some of the mileage reimbursement and car rental stuff, we'll touch on that when we get to my policy, but we can hold off on that for now. But I think there's a little bit more in depth that we don't have in here, and that's what I'm trying to understand is if we have it somewhere else, then.
Okay, so go ahead, Patrick.
Nope, I was just saying we do have those procedures, so
Okay.
we'll come up with that.
So getting back to 3326, which is where we're talking about, I think that Mitch, I know that you had a couple questions, but it sounds like from Patrick's responses, first of all, the vendor language doesn't inhibit us at all from deleting the policy because it's not binding on vendors. So, and as far as the out of schedule payments, I do believe that that's handled by the purchasing policy and that there's discretion with the superintendent or the superintendent's designee on that issue as well. And I think that's what Patrick said. Is that accurate, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay. So then, Mitch, any opposition to moving to delete this policy?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So I will, Mitch, can you make a motion that I can second? And then we'll vote.
And I forgot the policy. I just believed it.
3326.
I move to make a motion to delete policy 3326 from our current policies due to redundancy.
And I would second that motion. Discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor of that?
The only question I have is, can we assume that we add this to the next agenda then for a first read to delete?
Yes, absolutely, Joe. And I'm sorry about it being clunky with the last one because I didn't see it in the minutes, so I didn't know that we had that.
No, that's okay. So Diana, if you can just make a note that we make a note in the board document for future agenda items that this will be a first read at the next regular meeting.
Will do.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I don't think we actually took the vote. All in favor, Mitch?
Mitch Helmer, aye.
Chrislyn Holiday, Weinercheck, aye. So we have a vote on that. So we'll recommend to the full board that we delete 3326. Okay. The next policy that I had was 3521. And Diana had sent, when she set up the packet, she had also sent policy 7460 from Neola, which is essentially the same policy that we have on energy management conservation.
I had 3548 from the last meeting that we never discussed. That's the one.
You're right. You're right. And that didn't land on this agenda. So we can, if we have time, Mitch, I'd like to get to that. Otherwise, we'll have to circle back at a next meeting because we didn't publish that in this agenda.
That was fine for this meeting. I didn't get a chance. I thought,
okay.
I didn't know we didn't discuss the last one. Okay. I just have to pull off quick. But you can keep going.
So, but this one on 3521, I was a little bit puzzled about why this was in the financial policies, but Patrick, you probably can explain that to me.
I actually can't. And one of the things that I had written on this policy is that this policy shouldn't be in finance. It should be in facilities, which is why if you look at our policy, it's 3521. But if you look at the Neola code, it's under section 7000 property.
Right. And that makes more sense to me. So, I mean, maybe the recommendation of the committee is that we just move it to where it should be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in my mind, this should get moved to property and it should be discussed at the facilities committee level.
Okay. That sounds like a great plan. I would entertain a motion from a committee member that we do that.
I think you're asking me to approve it, but I'm just reading it, so sorry.
Okay. Well, I think all I'm asking for, Mitch, is that because this deals with energy conservation and is more of a facilities committee issue, that it be referred to the facilities committee, but that we, I think the numbering should be changed so that it comes under their purview instead of the purview of this committee, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yep. I make a motion to move policy 3521 under property and operations. Is that the category?
I think that's the category. Patrick, is that correct?
Yeah, it should be under property.
But
Okay.
it is under here when I'm on the website.
That's kind of part of my reorganization of the policies, just because they are all over the place. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a pretty small detail. So if we have to make a motion to move it, I'm fine with that. Whatever.
I think that's all that we should be doing as a finance committee, because I just don't see this as a financial policy.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a financial impact, but I guess
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I think you could argue it all day long in any direction we wanted, but yeah, I have no problem moving that under facilities.
Okay, so is that a motion there, Mr. Helmer?
Yep, motion to move 3521 under facilities and operations.
And I would second that motion. All in favor?
Mitch Helmer, aye.
Crystalline Holiday Wondercheck, aye. All right, sounds good. Okay, so now the last policy that we had on the agenda for tonight is 3240, which is post-employment benefits. And I did have a couple of questions about this one, probably for Patrick. And Joe, you may have some background on this as well. So I guess I'd appreciate both of you chiming in if you can answer these questions. So one thing that I noticed in the very first paragraph was that, you know, again, it's tying the benefits, the post-employment benefits to the employee handbook, which I understand. And then it says that post-employment benefits may be provided to administrators and classified staff when competitive reasons, as determined by the superintendent or designee, necessitate doing so. But my question is, in my experience, we have routinely received letters from staff that are retiring asking for post-employment benefits to continue. So if the policy says that it's determined by the superintendent, then why is that happening?
That we're bringing it to the board?
Yes, that's what I'm confused about. I mean, it makes sense to me that it's brought to the board, and I appreciate the fact that it's being brought to the board. But then if bringing it to the board is part of our practice, then I think we need to memorialize it in this policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree or necessarily agree or disagree with that. Here's what I wrote on this particular policy, Crystal, and you're going to love this one too. I don't think that this is a financial policy. While there's financial implications to this, I think that this policy fits better under personnel.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Finance, and so, you know, again, I know that there's a significant financial implication with this, but I think if we put too much into the finance policies, then we start to, I think, step out of our lanes.
That makes sense to me. I think that and I'm fine moving it, Patrick, and making it come under personnel. That's fine with me. The one thing I did want to point out, though, before we do that, is that I found some typos in the policy that I think need to be fixed, because under the classified staff section, so right in the very bottom of the page, where it says, I think what they did was they cut and pasted the administrator section into the classified staff section. So it says the benefit plan at the time of the administrator's retirement shall cease at the time of the administrator's benefit, when I think they mean the classified staff benefit. Does that make sense?
I'm just trying to find where you are.
Sure. I'm so in this policy, they've got two major sections. The first section is administrators, deals with the provisions regarding administrators, and the second section deals with classified staff. So if you look at the section under classified staff, there are three paragraphs, three subparagraphs, A, B, and C. And under paragraph C, it refers to, in the very last line on that first page, enrolled in the health benefit plan at the time of it says administrator's retirement.
No,
I think it should be classified staff's retirement.
Yep. And it's also on the first line of the second page too.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at. Both of those need to be just fixed. I think that was just a typo because I think they just cut and pasted, from the above paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that should be fixed when we review it. But I'm okay moving this to personnel and moving on with our financial policies. So, Mitch, what are your thoughts?
I make a motion.
Thank you, sir.
3240 to the finance or to the personnel.
I would second that motion. All in favor?
Mitch Helmer, aye.
Ruslan Holiday Weinercheck, aye. So this policy will be moved to the personnel section of policies, and hopefully we can fix that typo when we get it reviewed there. Okay, so now that we have a couple extra minutes, if Mitch, I know you had some thoughts on this policy 3548, mileage reimbursement, right?
Yeah. And
okay.
So ask you to kind of combine. So 3548, I think, should be deleted and moved into 3230. 3230 is staff reimbursement for meetings and conferences.
Okay. One question on that. This is for Patrick. Patrick, do we deal with mileage reimbursement in the employee handbook at all?
No, the mileage reimbursement is actually it's explained in the intranet that's available to to all of our staff. And so it's not in policy, but it is it's a procedure. Yeah.
I guess if we have procedures and we have these policies, what is shouldn't we only have one? And what is the overriding? I guess my concern is I don't want to have to update everything twice for you guys or have stuff that's in conflict.
Yeah, and I think the purpose of this policy, and I just want to pull it up quick, is it's setting that the standard mileage rate will be the Internal Revenue Service amount for every year. So it doesn't change our procedures. It doesn't supersede our procedures. It just states in policy how we're going to come up with our mileage rate. Because there are districts that will vary from this particular rate. Not many though, because essentially by using the IRS rates, it takes any
challenge or anything out of the question, right? And
yep,
I've a company that didn't use the IRS posted.
Okay, so Patrick, what is your thought on, Mitch is suggesting that we move the mileage reimbursement to policy 3230 and combine it with that policy. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm just trying to look for, do we have a printout of 3230?
I don't. I do not. I know Mitch just brought this up, so I don't have that.
Yeah, and I apologize.
There it is.
And this is where I didn't want to go too far into this because I might be I just don't know all the policies we have. And then on top of this, there's another policy for 3545.4 for pupil transportation in employee-owned vehicles.
That should be a separate policy, Mitch, but I can understand that staff reimbursement for, I can see where we could combine 3230 and whatever the
mileage. The mileage reimbursement, that 3548.
Right.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we table 3548 for now, Mitch? And then we'll take up 3230 and 3548 at the next finance committee meeting.
Okay. Yeah,
Does that sound good?
So, yeah, real quick on that though, I think there's just some other stuff in there so Patrick can kind of, there was stuff that was lacking in here about meeting state minimum insurance requirements. I just kind of pulled some standard language from large companies that I've seen policies, and it seemed like I can send it in an email, maybe of some of the other stuff.
That'd be great. Patrick, does that sound like a way to proceed on this?
Yeah, I don't think that's a terrible idea. I'd like to see what Neolo recommends for school districts too, because I think we really don't have a tremendous amount of transportation that we.
That's what I was figuring too. You guys, you guys aren't spending $1 million on travel, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I think it's one of those things too where any policy we can get rid of and have more unilateral uniformity where there's one place to go and everything's under there, I think it helps a little bit too. So.
And then to that point, Patrick, Diana, could you pull what the Neola recommended policies are in this area with regard to mileage reimbursement and the staff reimbursement for expenses? Would you mind pulling that for us and have that in the packet for the next finance committee meeting?
Sure, not at all, or not a problem. And just so you know, it does look like on here that actually Neola does have a policy that kind of covered both of them. So yeah, I'll pull that up for you.
That'd be super. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. And then the last policy that we did not deal with in the last meeting, which was Amy's policy, was 3433, which was regarding the student activity fund. And that's just a one-sentence policy, so that maybe we could dispense with that as well. The student activity fund, the policy just says the principal of the school shall prepare a monthly report showing receipts, disbursements, the balance of each activity account, and amount on deposit. So my first question is to Patrick. Patrick, is that being done in the district?
No. This is an old policy.
Yep.
Right now, we should be looking at a Neolo policy that that deals with the more current Fund 60 student activity funds. So again, I think we should do a little bit more research on this one and see what Neolo has on student activities, their student activity funds.
That'd be great. And Diana, can you pull that for us as well?
I will do that.
Perfect. So I'll just make a note that I want to include that on the next agenda as well with comparing it to the Neola policy so we can see, and then I'll ask for your input on that, Patrick, as we move forward with that.
Certainly.
Okay. All right. I think that's it on the policy discussion. Mitch, is there anything else, or Patrick or Joe, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with regard to those policies?
No, I really don't have anything. Joel?
Nope, I concur with Patrick.
Okay, great. Mitch, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay, so then let's go on to the last item on the agenda, which is the future goals. I just called it the initial discussion because Amy had sent an email asking that we all as committees kind of set a set of goals for the year as far as what we want to do and accomplish so that we have some, obtainable goals and have some direction. And so I'm going to be thinking about that. And Mitch, I'm going to ask you to think about that as well. My first thoughts were that I really would like to get through all of these financial policies in this calendar year, which I think we should be able to. And then I'd like to, of course, be able to get our reports in order, and Patrick is on that, so I'm confident that that's going to happen. As far as getting better vision, as far as where we are with the budget on a month-to-month basis, and having a better handle on the disbursements and the income that we're realizing every single month. So those are my initial thoughts, but I just wanted to kind of broach the topic here so that, Mitch, you can think about it and then kind of gather your thoughts for the next meeting where we'll set those goals, hopefully with Amy also in attendance. So any thoughts on that, Mitch?
Yeah, I think that's good. Know that we've got all of these appointments and everything tonight, so I don't want to go too far into this until we know who's on what committees for the next year as well.
Oh, sure. No, that's fine. And I just want to, if you're still on the finance committee, that's what I'd like you to think about for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So I don't have anything else. Does anybody else have anything? Mitch?
Nope.
And Patrick?
Nope, I'm good.
And Joe, anything from you?
No, thanks.
All right. And Diana, anything from you?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. And then Diana, for the minutes, once you get those all typed out, can you email them out to the committee, or just give us a heads up that they're on board docs or wherever you're going to house them, just so I
Sure,
know to go and
absolutely.
look for them?
Sure, absolutely.
That'd be great. I really appreciate that.
And then
Okay.
I did make that change, so I will show those to you as well from
Perfect.
last committee.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So I think we're done 5 minutes early. So now, Diana, for the next meeting, do I hang up and call back, or what do I do?
You can actually stay on, and everyone else should be
Okay.
joining. And I see Kate just joined. So, yep, you
Oh,
guys
there you
just
go.
hold on here, and then this will be your open session as well.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody on?
It looks like Mitch didn't call back on.
Okay.
He was on. Mitch, are you out there?
Here. I didn't leave, did I?
Are you logged on?
Mitch.
Yeah. Are you on the computer?
Oh, it kicked me out of the Zoom meeting. Or the WebEx. I'm on the call and the WebEx.
Okay.
This is
Here?
Oh, there he is. There he is. Okay.
All right. Looks like everybody is on.
Yeah, looks like it. He's in.
All right. I'll go ahead and get started. Oh, Janet can't hear us. Can everybody else hear okay?
Is audio on?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I can hear.
Can you hear Janet?
I'm guessing she would receive a prompt if she's doing the video version
Mm-hmm.
to use her local speakers.
Now I can hear people.
Okay.
That was my headset.
Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:33 and a quorum of members is present. So the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Mr. Kurth.
Here.
Mrs. Manley.
Here.
Ms. Schultz.
Here.
Ms. Unger.
Here.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Here.
In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with indivisible, liberty and justice for all. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by posting the agenda at each district school, the district office, and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. The first item on our agenda is the board reorganization. So what we will do for this, is you will see typically we would do this in person and have a ballot that you would have and placed in front of you. This time how we're going to do it is you will see each office for the board will be presented on the right side. We will start with the president. So as we did last year, I will indicate which members have expressed interest in each position, and we will vote one by one for president and then vice president and then clerk and then treasurer. So we'll start with president. The member interested in this position is Ms. Crosby, but you may select one of any of members from the board. So make your selection now. You'll hit submit. And then once Diana receives all of the polls, she will let us know the results.
Amy Crosby is your president.
Thank you. The next item is the vice president. Again, this will be the same where you'll see on the right side of the screen the vice president. And
I've got to change this out.
The members that expressed interest in this position are Ms. Wonderchuk and Ms. Schultz, but you may select any of the members from the board.
I'm not seeing it come up yet.
I think mine froze on me here. Oh, shoot. Okay.
We can give it a minute. That's fine. The alternative backup will be we will email our selection to Diana. But let's give it a minute and see if it pops back up.
It's not letting me. It's like it froze. I apologize. Yeah, my screen totally froze on me.
Okay.
So can we email you or do we need to text you?
What do you have a preference, Amy?
I think my suggestion would be an email.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree. So if you just compose a quick email, Vice President.
Actually, I see the problem. It was waiting for a message box on my other screen. So my apologies. All right, let's try this again. Sorry, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Okay, here we go. All right. There we go. Now you should see Vice President on your right.
Yes, we do. So again, the members interested are Ms. Wondercheck and Ms. Schultz, but you may select any one of the board members and then hit submit.
And Ms. Schultz is your vice president.
Thank you. Moving on to clerk, which will be showing in just a minute or so. The member interested in this position is Mr. Kurth, but you may select any one of the members from the board. And
And Mr. Kurth is your clerk.
the final board officer position is treasurer. The member interested in this position is Mr. Helmer. You may select any one of the remaining board members.
And Mr. Helmer is your treasurer.
The next three are appointments from our board to other areas. So the first one is the appointment of the CISA 1 Annual Convention Delegate. And I'd like to appoint Ms. Unger, if that's something you'd like to take on.
Sure, thanks.
The next one's the appointment of liaison to the New Berlin City Council. I'd like to appoint Ms. Manley.
Sure, thank you.
And finally, the appointment of the WASB representative. I'd like to appoint Ms. Wondercheck.
Thank you.
The next item is our committees. So as everyone's aware, we established 3 committees last year, and we're going to continue with those same 3. I'd like each committee, I'll read what they are, and I think I read this last year, but what they're designed for, what each committee is designed for. As I name the chairs for each, I'd like to ask the chairs to hold one meeting, at least one meeting per quarter, so 4 meetings a year. And so if you are able to take that responsibility when I nominate you as chair, let me know. So the first one is the Personnel Committee. So the committee shall consist of 3 members of the Board of Education and shall review and present to the board recommendations concerning matters pertaining to the personnel of the School District of New Berlin. The main task of the Personnel Committee shall be to advise the board on recommended regular and/or supplemental employment, job descriptions, and overall staffing patterns throughout the district. The committee shall also review, in coordination with the Director of Employee Services, a feedback system for existing staff. Any additional tasks regarding personnel matters assigned by the board shall be dealt with in an advisory manner by the Personnel Committee. I'd like to name Ms. Unger as chair of the Personnel Committee. Ms. Unger, is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. And I'd like to continue with the committee members as Ms. Manley and Ms. Schultz, if that's okay, the 2 of you.
Yes.
Ms. Manley? tasks regarding building and grounds operations assigned by the board shall be dealt with in an advisory manner by the facility committee. Mr. Helmer, I'd like to appoint you chair of the committee, if that's okay.
Yeah.
For the additional members of this committee, I'd like to appoint myself and Ms. Unger. Is that right, Ms. Unger?
Yes, thanks.
And last, the Finance Committee. This committee shall consist of 3 members of the Board of Education, shall review and present to the board recommendations concerning matters pertaining to the financial operations of the school district of Berlin. The main tasks include to monitor financial activities through monthly reviews on revenues and expenditures, including the financial report, review gifts and grants received by the district, and any additional tasks regarding financial matters assigned to the board shall be dealt with in an advisory manner by the Finance Committee. To continue with this committee with Ms. Wonderchuk as chair, if that's all right.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
And continue with Mr. Hummer and Mr. Crosby as members as well. And one task for each committee, we're going to make sure that we update the website, the New Orleans website, school district website, with the main goals of each committee on what we're trying to achieve with these committees, and then keep that up to date throughout each year. We can revisit the goals of those. So thank you. When you work, chairs, as you work to schedule your meetings, please work with your other members of the committee and then also with Ms. Hanson to get those onto the calendar, making sure that you provide enough notice ahead of time. So the next item on the agenda is privilege of the floor. This portion of the meeting is an opportunity for you to communicate to the board during a public session. These comments were emailed to Ms. Hanson prior to this meeting. Ms. Hanson will be reading these comments during our virtual meeting. The same restrictions and rules apply as in-person meetings. Each presentation is to be restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Privilege of the floor will be limited to 1/2 hour. Presentations are not to be designed for purposes of engaging others in debate in this forum. Discussion of certified, classified professional personnel or of individual Board of Education members shall not be considered an appropriate topic, and the speaker will be ruled out of order.
I did receive 2. First is from Tracy Stanislawski of 3612 South 157th Street. Good evening. First of all, I wanted to commend the district's efforts in orchestrating online learning for our students. I'm sure that this has not been an easy task, and I appreciate how our teachers are continuing to engage their students in positive and resourceful ways to ensure that learning continues at home. This being said, I wanted to address our district's report card. The report card shows growth and high achievement for many of the students in New Berlin. In fact, overall, our students score very well. However, for those students with disabilities, this isn't completely the case. While there may be a variety of factors involved in the ways data are collected, our student achievement for ELA and math show that only 15% were advanced or proficient. The remaining 85% were either basic or below basic. In addition, there was approximately a 10% increase in the number of students in the below basic category from the previous 2 years. What can we do to continue to ensure that enough attention is paid to this population so that those gaps become smaller? Are we providing enough support for teachers and students? Do we have enough staff? Is the training provided to all staff who work with special needs students enough? Is the district providing opportunities for all students, their parents, and/or the community to help? What about self-esteem and mental health and its relationship to academics? I understand that these are complicated matters and answers don't come easy. However, I encourage the district to take a closer look at the data in the report card and at current ways that we support and evaluate students with special needs so that we can continue to ensure positive outcomes. One final consideration, having representatives on the board from all parts of the district, including student representatives, has been monumental in working towards meeting the needs of all of our students. It's great to hear from other schools about what is happening in our school district and how they are working together towards positive change. With this in mind, I propose that the board considers taking representation one step further by adding a representative from our special needs population. This sends a strong message that people with disabilities can participate like their peers and that their voices matter in decisions that directly affect their education. Thank you for your time. And secondly, from Jessica Ward at 2130 South East Lane, she had a question regarding virtual learning. Can we make science, social studies, art, music, and gym class optional for elementary students? The workload is too much. Thank you.
And thank you to Jessica and Tracy for taking the time to email us your concerns and your comments. Please know that we will take these into consideration, and we just appreciate that time being taken out of your day. Next item is the superintendent update.
Yeah, so my update will be for the majority related to our distance learning efforts and the impact that it has had, that our district has had as a result of COVID-19. Few topics in no particular order. The first one being financial. The CARES Act has set aside dollars for public schools all across the nation. And the way that the dollars will likely be distributed, and this is yet to be solidified by the governor, of which he has been tasked with determining how these dollars will be disseminated. But as we understand it at this point now, is that allocations for K-12 schools will be based off of Title I federal dollar allocations. Now, I do want to clarify that these are not Title I federal allocations. They are simply allocations based off of our Title I dollars. Given this, we would expect to receive approximately $70,000 in one-time emergency revenue due to the CARES Act. There are still many factors and questions which need to be answered by the state before anything is confirmed, and we will keep you posted as we learn more. But again, those dollars are to be spent on things that the school district is facing based on the COVID-19 impact. The next item I wanted to speak to you about was the Department of Public Instruction Instructional Hours Waiver. It's been recommended that we formally apply for the Instructional Hours Waiver being provided by the Department of Public Instruction. It's being recommended as a safeguard for the district given all the uncertainty that we have and should we have any challenges in the future. We will likely add this to the board agenda the second meeting of May or the first meeting of June for the school board's approval. Please note that there must be a public hearing held, which we're guessing would be held virtually, and we will provide details further of how we could make that work. And again, we would suggest that the public hearing be held within the agenda of one of your two regularly scheduled meetings, unless we have to have a separate public hearing and a separate meeting. And then we would ask that we have that immediately prior to one of your upcoming meetings and not have a need for a special meeting evening and just kind of line it up with your current regular meetings as we have them. Spring sports. Per the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association, WIAA, the spring sports season has been canceled. They have, though, amended some of their guidelines to allow for added student contact time with coaches after July 1. And folks can go to the WIAA's website for specific responses to general questions that are being asked. We ourselves still have many questions that we need to address before moving forward. And while we hold out hope that and have some optimism that there's a possibility that we may be able to have some sort of normalcy with spring sports after July 1 in a window of time, that would also allow graduated seniors to participate. Given the rollout of the Badger Bounce Back program, we're still not sure whether it will certainly occur or not. As far as the end of the school year, at this time, we will be working our school calendar all the way through until June 9th. Please note, though, that the end of the year will look a little bit different this year given the circumstances. For example, we need an opportunity for our students and our staff, mainly our students, to retrieve all of their personal items. So while we had sent them home that Friday evening in March, or that Friday after school in March, with some of our resources like books and laptops and Chromebooks and iPads, we didn't think we would be gone for more than at least a couple of weeks at that time. And so therefore, we will need to set aside some time the last couple of weeks leading up to the end of the school year to allow students to retrieve those items, as well as to return some of the items in the books and so on that they have as we end the school year. So again, we will certainly provide more details to our families as we near the end of the year. And certainly, but again, just want to clarify that our plan is to work through June 9th, but it will be very atypical to what it's looked like in previous years. Summer school. Unfortunately, we relented to the fact that because we have to close schools per the Safer at Home order through June 30th, the likelihood of any sort of typical summer school that we had planned is not likely. And what I mean by that is the 400 plus students that have enrolled for elementary summer school, as well as other students at the secondary level, we are not planning necessarily on having any sort of large scale summer school. Instead, we are working at moving all of our summer school courses to the ones that we possibly can to move them to a digital and a virtual distance learning option. Certainly not all courses will be possible this way. Further, there's right now, with regards to the revenue limit formula, only 7th through 12th grade students in a limited fashion are eligible to be counted for summer school, which impacts the revenue limit formula and possible revenue for next school year. Because of the breadth of our previous offerings for summer school, we did receive a substantial amount of revenue as a result of that membership, which essentially paid for summer school and with some added revenue opportunity for the district. Not significant, but certainly it paid for itself and then some. We are, though, still looking at the possibility after July 1 of possibly doing some one-on-one and or small group face-to-face opportunities for students that need it. We are also looking at extended school year ESY needs for students with disabilities and what that could mean if we can do face-to-face and so on. So again, we still have some questions, but we do certainly know that we will not be able to offer our traditional summer school as we've known it recently. School fees. We are in the process of determining the most feasible way to address prorated school fees. For example, we have fees for field trips that were never held. We have fees for parking that needs to be prorated at our secondary schools. And then we also have spring sports and spring activities that were never held. While, again, we still hold out hope that there's a possibility that we can do something with spring sports after July 1, our plan is to reimburse families less any fees that were left owed no later than the end of the school year. And most certainly, if we can try and get them out sooner than that, we will. But as of right now, our goal is to get all of those fees reimbursed no later than the end of the school year, which again is Tuesday, June 9th. Unfortunately, the last piece that I want to share with you is the sentiment related to the impact of our 2020 graduating seniors. It certainly has been very difficult to hear and read and listen to the impact that this whole thing has had on them particularly. This is certainly not how they would have wanted to end their year, their senior year, their one and only senior year, and it certainly wasn't the way that we would have wanted it either. As a result of essentially the Governor Evers Safer at Home guidelines, as well as that of taking into account the Badger bounce back, there is a possibility that we could have a face-to-face graduation in late July, early August. That's assuming that we are in phase 3 of the Badger, the bounce back plan, which is has a lot of things that need to happen in order for us to get to that point. Again, still holding out hope and to generate optimism. We have surveyed all of our senior families and students to see if that is something to vote on a day or two that could work for them to be able to host some sort of face-to-face graduation. Meanwhile, we are preparing for virtual graduations should that not be a possibility for us to have a face-to-face. And we will certainly provide more details as again, we are able. Certainly, it's not just graduation, but the senior dinner dance, senior awards night, and the senior walks where the seniors walk through our elementary schools. Those things have either been either canceled or will be done in a different platform. And so, certainly it's not what we would have wanted, but we are looking at other things like a senior parade at some point, possibly the last day of school that would somewhat take the place of a senior walk, senior awards night. That's likely going to be done virtually, and we'll provide more details on that. And then again, should we be able to we don't think we'd be able to do a senior dinner and a dance, but from what I've gathered, those senior dinners and dances are really meant as a culminating event for all seniors to get together one last time before graduation. And, if mass gatherings are allowed, we would do something like that. Again, it may not be a dinner and a dance. It may be a tailgate, or it may be, something at one of the schools or somewhere off-site at the week leading up to the new graduation date. Again, assuming we are able to have a face-to-face date. I do also kind of want to mention a couple other items for the board that are not, well, they are as a result of the COVID-19, but just as a follow-up to previous board decisions. We are moving forward with the pavement that was approved by the board for Orchard Lane. While we do recognize that we may need to have that back parking lot area and that rear entrance accessed for drop-off and pickup of the items that were mentioned previously, we will make sure that we will have accessibility back there for vehicles to be able to access. But it, obviously will, be laid out and so that we're not, pigeonholing traffic just to the front entry. I also did want to mention that we are still awaiting the commercial dishwashers for 3 of our schools. That was also approved by the board at the last meeting. And we will be moving forward with the installation of those given what we know. And right now, our food service production is not requiring any sort of dishwashing mechanisms or needs. And if we were to need that, we could do that at one of the other elementary schools as needed. We also are awaiting the LED lighting project pieces, the bulbs and all the pieces that go with that. So as soon as we get that, we will have our staff move forward and get to work on that project. So I apologize for the breadth of this update, but felt important that that we share this with you. And again, we don't have all the answers right now. We will certainly provide them as best we can and communicate those out as best we can when we have them. We certainly know that this is not a full replacement of what we are able to do within our schools. And but know that we are putting our best foot forward. We've got a great staff that are very committed. Our staff are being very flexible with families to work with them on how best we can meet their specific child's needs. And we will continue to do that all the way through. And again, also just want to mention that our staff, this week will be the first week that our staff are essentially compressing 5 days of learning into 4 days. Want to clarify the fact that Fridays, our staff are working all 5 days, but that 5th day is set aside for professional development and professional learning, as well as meeting individual student and or small group student needs as we are able, and or having parent meetings and so on. But again, we are working, our staff are working 5 days a week, and we will be working the rest of our calendar as has been suggested previously. That is my update.
Thank you. The next item is our administrative.
I'm sorry, Amy, I'm sorry. This is Chrislyn. I had a few questions for Joe.
Typically, we would put that into our regular agenda. So if you want to bring it up as an item on our regular agenda.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The next item is the administrative team report. We're going to have a virtual tour of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we are unable to physically host the board over at Ronald Reagan, and so Kelly and the team, the administrative team, Brady, Julie, and others over at Ronald Reagan put together essentially the same amount of time that would have been spent, sharing with you about what the great things happening at the respective school, but also some sort of idea of a virtual tour of the building. And so we've prepared a video for it, and I would ask whoever is running the slideshow and the videos to go ahead and start that video right now, please. Thank you.
Hello there, board members, community members, members of the administrative team. I want to welcome you to Ronald Reagan. Obviously, this is an unprecedented time in education in our state, our country, and probably our world. We were scheduled to do a tour and a board update, so we're going to do a quick video update for you. We know you're meeting digitally, so we're going to go quickly. Our goal here is to give you as much information as we possibly can, show you a little bit about the building, and then go as quickly as we possibly can. Right now, there's obviously no students in the building, so the people that you're going to see in this video are myself and Mrs. Cater. So come on in and let's get started with our tour and board presentation.
This is our library in which we last met with our teachers and instructional staff in person. We had a huge task ahead of us, and that was to create a model of digital learning in which the education of our students continued, the learning activities allowed them to continue and move forward. Things are going pretty well. We meet with our teachers twice a week. We have reviewed lessons with them. We've problem solved with some of the technology challenges that have come about. But overall, things are going well. The lessons are very innovative. Here, you'll see our library. This is where, on a normal week, hundreds of kids will filter through here, taking part in a variety of literacy activities.
So I agree with Julie. Our kids and our parents and our staff are doing just a wonderful job in continuing the learning during this distance time. This part of the presentation, I just want to share with you kind of our big goal that we've been working on this year. As everybody knows, Ronald Reagan has been a very, very high-achieving school for a number of years. In fact, the state for the last several years has said we significantly exceed their expectations. one of the things when you look at that school report card that we're most proud of is our student achievement numbers. Our students are achieving at really, really high levels. You can see since 13-14, our score in that category has really, really, really grown quite a bit, and we're really proud of that. But when we look at our score, we know that we significantly exceed expectations, but we notice the overall score has grown for 4 straight years, and then last year it went down just a little bit. That's somewhat concerning to us. We also noticed that the big decrease in that area was our school growth. And then we also know that reading tends to fall a little bit below math. So we wanted to address those things in our school planning this year. So what do? We decided to switch from making an achievement goal by where we would say we want this X amount of kids to achieve at this certain level to a growth goal where we want kids to grow. Why is that a good thing? Well, first, it's something we know in our data we need to look at. Secondly, it really helps us to focus on everyone. If we set a certain level and want certain, a percentage of kids to get above it, there's kids that are already scoring above that, and sometimes they don't get focused on as much. Or there's kids that are scoring really, really below that expected level, and they work really, really hard all year long, and they don't get to that level, and even though they grew a ton. So that really helps us out, and it also helps us out with our goal setting. So what do we say? We said that by the end of the 1920 school year, 62% of students at Ronald Reagan Elementary School will meet or exceed our growth projection on the spring map reading assessment. Now, just because we're doing a reading goal doesn't mean we're not focusing on other really, really important areas. Within that reading goal, we're focusing on staff collaboration. We're also looking at how can we grow students' social emotional development and their critical thinking, all within that reading goal. So let's talk about that math growth projection for just a second. This is my son, Alex. He scored 161 points at the beginning of the year on map reading. He's a first grader at Ronald Reagan. Now, what map does is they will look at over several years all the kids across the country who have taken the map test. Now, those are kids in high achieving schools, low achieving schools, big schools, little schools. All schools get put together, and they look at the average growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and then beginning of the year to the middle of the year, and they take the average growth and they say that's a kid's growth projection or growth expectation. Now, because that's based on an average statistically, half your kids are going to fall above that, half your kids are going to fall below that. So again, that's why we would love to say 100% of our kids are going to meet their growth expectation, but statistically, that's maybe not possible. But we did look at our data over the course of last year, and we noticed that about 56% of our kids met that growth expectation, that average growth for the year. And we wanted to increase that and up that. So we thought a good percentage to increase that by was about 6%. And we also wanted to increase some of our other groups by 6% as well. So what do? We introduce this concept of lagging indicators and leading indicators. A lagging indicator is that big overall percentage of students meeting their growth expectation. Our leading indicators, though, are the things that our staff can look at on a daily or weekly basis to see are kids really growing. So we asked them this simple question. If at any time I walked up to you and said, are the kids in your class growing in reading, what would you tell me and how would you know? And by doing that, our staff developed 2 or 3 different indicators. Each grade level is a little bit different that they could use to monitor student growth during the year. So it really kind of has driven not only our reading growth, but also our staff collaboration around reading growth.
Hi, this is one of our pods, third grade pod actually. For the most part, every pod is structured the same. As you walk in, we have student lockers on each side of the pod. Moving through, we have a carpeted area. It's our collaboration area for the pod. This is where students can collaborate together on assignments or projects. Teachers, instructional staff can meet with students more in small group situations. You know what, let's talk a little bit about third grade and literacy. So When we look at our state report card, one of the things we have noticed is the tremendous growth we've made for third grade. If we look back to our 13-14 school year, our baseline measure was 13.6 points. This is out of 20 points. Last year, our data for the 18-19 school year, we had actually grown to 18.1 points. We're very proud of this growth. We know that third grade is an important year for reading because it marks that transition period in which students go from learning to read to reading to learn. And so later on, we're going to talk a little bit about our professional development for our instructional staff, where the focus is really on that transition piece of literacy. But before we do that, let's finish our tour of the pod. Coming out of our collaboration area, we have additional locker bays, again on both sides. We then have our restrooms. Moving to the back of the pod is another classroom. And then we also have, every pod has a small conference room in which, again, we can use it for small group learning, instruction, collaboration amongst our teachers, our instructional staff, collaboration amongst our students.
Here we are at our ELP Forest Classroom. Our ELP is our early learning program, and it's a program that we developed a number of years ago now in the district that we host here at Ronald Reagan. It means we have 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in the building as well, and they get to learn all kinds of really great school readiness stuff from some really awesome teachers. So this is that room. We're going to kind of keep walking it around. One of the things that gets a little challenging though with having 3-year-old teachers all the way up through 6th grade teachers is developing a professional learning plan that meets their needs. Now Julie talked about how we're really proud of our 3rd grade reading scores, and we want them to continue to grow. So we use 3rd grade as kind of that tipping point in developing our reading plan. So what we did is kids teachers from ELP up to 2nd grade, our focus with them this year is developing their capacity and ability to teach phonemic awareness. We brought in a new phonemic awareness program, and we know that some of the scientific stuff about early reading really says a lot about kids' phonemic awareness. So we're really entirely focused on making sure that they're learning how to teach phonemic awareness the best that they can. On top of that then is we're working on an instructional strategy called shared reading. And shared reading provides an opportunity to bring what the kids are learning in their phonemic awareness instruction into their reading. So there's that really great transfer that happens. So we've been working on that with our ELP through 2nd grade teachers. Now our 3rd through 6th grade teachers, working on phonemic awareness and shared reading just wouldn't be all that beneficial for them. So one of the things that we learned is that transition from learning to read, phonemic awareness and shared reading, to reading to learn is really making sure that we can pinpoint exactly what students need in their reading. So we've been having our 3rd through 6th grade teachers participate in a book study where they're working to assess their kids in different ways for different things, and then work with them on developing goals that they're going to set for their reading, and then also think about, okay, how can I strategically meet with these kids either individually, in small groups, and set up my classroom so that I can do that, so I can get the best use of my instructional time. Really our goal was by the end of the year to have them meeting in small groups or individually with at least 30 kids throughout the week. We're progressing to that, and it's something that we can continue next year. Finally, a group that we've been working on really with this reading thing is our special ed teachers. We realized that last year we only met about 50% of our IEP goals. And so we really wanted to work with our special ed teachers this year on making sure that we're really identifying our disability-related need for our kids, and then we're writing goals that are appropriate and reachable, and then also that we're providing really sound research-based instruction. So we've been using the DPI's Step 5 professional learning to do that with our special education staff. So that's how we kind of differentiated our professional learning this year, so that we meet the needs of everybody in making sure that all kids are growing in their reading.
Well, it's been a positive experience, breaking up different learning for our staff, so that not everybody's getting the same thing, and we can really target things. One of the things we noticed at the kind of our mid-year check on our map is that 63% of our students had met their fall to winter growth projections, which was something that exceeded our goal for this year. We did notice on breaking that data down a little bit that our low socioeconomic status students we're not growing. Didn't have as high a percentage of those students meeting their growth expectation. So that's one area that we had to really dig into just a little bit with staff. And also our students with disabilities are progressing towards that 61% of them meeting their growth projection that we had hoped for. So overall, pretty good, with some areas that we're still looking to improve on. 5 of 7 grade levels in their collaborative efforts met that 62% of students goal that we had. The ones that we didn't, we kind of dug into. I wonder what's going on. Why aren't we meeting? The highest grade level was second grade, where 74.5% of students met their growth expectation or growth projection, and then the highest classroom in the grade level or in the whole school is Mrs. Eichstadt's second grade. 100% of her kids met their growth projection, which was just awesome. We built that up big time, and showing kids and teachers that we can get to 100%, which is something obviously we're continually working for. Another nugget of data to share. We look at this percentage of students getting A's and B's on the report cards in reading, and you can see our percentage of students has grown. So that's another nice little growth indicator that we have going on in reading. You might ask about Alex. Well, his winter score was 168. If you remember back, his projected growth was 10. His actual growth was only 7. So he didn't meet that projected growth for him. But one of the cool things about having those leading indicators is that when we sat down and talked to the teachers, they were able to share with us, man, his sight word growth has been just really, really good. He's moved up a number of lists. His reading fluency, he's grown in a really big way. And then his reading level has increased to almost a second grade level. So they were pretty happy with his growth, and that just kind of shows you that one data point isn't always the best thing to base a ton of stuff on, and that's why we set up the leading indicators. So that's just a little bit of data on our goal, and now we're going to take you around to a few other spots within Regan that really show a little bit more about what makes our building special and how it our student experience is so awesome. So here we go.
One of the areas we are in right now is our 5th grade pod, and you can see that there are 4 hydroponic gardens in which every year students learn about the plant life cycle and how plants grow. And this year what they did is they actually grew lettuce. And once they were able to harvest lettuce, they took that and they donated it to our food service department, and it was actually used in our cafeteria to serve our students.
Here we are in our grand stairway, and one of the things that every year our 6th grade class has done traditionally is purchase a legacy gift for the school. And we have a big, beautiful building, and sometimes it's hard to think of something. So a few years ago, we kind of took that burden away by having them make art projects for their class. So each year, each kid in the 6th grade gets to make some kind of a piece of artwork that'll be a part of the artwork around Regan for years and years and years to come. So someday when they come back, or maybe when their kids come to school here, they can come back and show their child their puzzle piece or their leaf on the tree, and have great memories about Ronald Reagan.
Hallway adjacent to our art room. Look down this hallway. It's amazing, filled with the different creations by our students. The creativity that our students have is absolutely amazing.
So one of the biggest points of pride for me as the principal of this school is the Makerspace that we've worked collaboratively with Home and School to develop over the years. Through their fundraising, we've been able to turn this old computer lab into a space where kids can come and build and solve problems and collaborate and learn. Now, this room, well, what we found was a little bit small. So again, with some collaboration with Home and School and some donations and their amazing fundraising work, we were able to put up a wall in a portion of our library. So we now have this space. Right now, we've just got some old furniture in here, but starting next year, Home and School has agreed to use some of the funds from their fundraiser this year to make this space into a really cool collaborative space for kids. So this is going to be kind of their collaboration and design space, and then they're going to go back into this area and they're going to do their building. So we're really excited about the awesome work that kids have been doing in here and are going to be able to do in the years to come. I talked about our awesome collaboration with Home and School. You also saw our art hall and all the awesome things that our kids are doing. We really value the arts here around Regan. Our choir is second to none this year. They performed the national anthem at a Milwaukee Wave soccer game. In the past, they've performed at Brookfield Square. And this is another commitment we have to the arts, and our Home and School helps us support. We have a local artist come in every single year and do an artist in residence program with our kids, where they teach them their craft, and then the kids and the artists get to make some kind of a project together. This one was last year's project. Last year was a visual arts year. This year, we had a musical arts year where we had a man come in and teach some different things that he does in the music field. So if you walk around Regan, you'll see a bunch of artwork that we've created throughout the years with our artists in residence, and that was obviously funded by our Home and School. And then another really, really cool point of pride that we have at Regan is a program called Regan Gives Back. We want to teach our kids that it is not only important to get, but important to give back to our community. And so on an almost monthly basis, we have some kind of initiative that we give. We do things locally, like send Valentines to Children's Hospital, or send letters to soldiers at the VA. We do things a little bit more statewide or throughout the country, like we do a Pennies for Patients drive for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We also have done our Veterans Day program, where over the course of the last 4 years, we've raised enough money to send about 50 veterans on an honor flight, local veterans on an honor flight, which is really great. And then last year we started more a global focus too, where we had a staff member bring to us this Shoes for Africa thing, where our kids donate shoes that then we're able to send over to a village in Africa. So we're really excited about the work that our staff leads. This is a completely staff-led project. And we've come up with all kinds of really great ways to give back to our community. So we're super excited about that.
So that's it. That's our tour of Regan, a little bit about Regan. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Unfortunately, at this point in time, you couldn't come in and see our building. But once we are able to do that, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you'd like to stop in for a visit, just give us a call. We'd be happy to give you a tour. Stay safe, everyone.
So that ends our update. Again, unfortunately, we were unable to host, and so the rest of our. So that ends our update. Again, unfortunately, we were.
Thank you.
I'll try that again without echoing, so I shut that off. So that, again, we're planning on still, as I understand it, we still have another school or two left and with Poplar Creek for sure. And we'll certainly will be doing a virtual tour there as well. But again, I think these have been very well received, not only by the schools, obviously the ones that we are physically able to host, based on some of the feedback we received at Orchard Lane, and as well as some of the others. So I appreciate Amy's, guidance and direction in doing this. I think it's been, again, very well received, by all. So thank you for that.
The next item on our agenda is district reports. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Mr. Kurth, can you please read the donation report?
Jeffrey Kurth, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, first of all, we'd like to thank the Crohn's Corporation. This is going to the New Berlin West High School, Middle School in support of the robotics program. Is $2,000 in donation. New Berlin West also received from the UW Credit Union for the athletics program $750. New Berlin West also received from the Komatsu Mining Corporation in support of the robotics program $3,000. Ronald Reagan, the Ronald Reagan Home and School, donated $329.94 for the purchase of classroom furniture, as well as purchase for staff lunch of $275.54. We want to thank all of our donors for their wonderful donations. We appreciate all the help we can get. You guys are fantastic. Keep up the good work, and thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be pulled out for separate consideration?
Hi, this is Joe. I just wanted to point out a couple items. Item D under consent agenda, the WIA co-op agreement for boys hockey. There are no additional costs for us, but this is just a hoop that we need to jump through in order to allow those that participate in a co-op. It's just paperwork that needs to be approved and finalized with WIAA. The Super One contract, again, these are tentative proposed services based on our needs now. Certainly those services will be amended should we not render services for whatever reason, and we will not end up paying for anything that we do not use. So again, this is based off of our projected needs in our support and our work with our regional agency, CISA 1. So with that, we would recommend approval of the items in the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a motion?
It's Jeffrey Kurth. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mitch Helmer, second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Mr. Hummer to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Diana, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Kurth.
Yes.
Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Yes.
Ms. Manley.
Yes.
Ms. Schultz.
Yes.
Ms. Unger.
Yes.
Ms. Wondricek.
Yes.
Motion passes. We're moving on to our regular agenda. The first item on the regular agenda is the long-range facility considerations for the summer of 2020. Mr. Garza, did you want to tee that one up?
Yes, I apologize. I wanted to make sure I wasn't echoing in my ear again. But I would ask the board to please refer to the document that's attached. That's the long-range plan presentation we provided to the board on March 9. It was the last time we actually had a face-to-face board meeting held at Orchard Lane. I would suggest that you go through the slideshow and come up with go to the second to the last slide, which at the top states options for consideration. We really just wanted to solidify with the board where the board was at and kind of get your thoughts on where we left off based off of that conversation. certainly the board did approve the Orchard Lane rear parking lot and playground replacement. And again, as mentioned previously, that work is underway as soon as we are able, and once the weather subsides here. But we were then left with some of these other, what we felt were priorities for next school year. At least between the Eisenhower, I think we did get direction on the Orchard Lane playground. But we did want to just circle back on things like the tuck pointing and the drainage grates and exterior doors. The reason being is if we are going to move forward with these types of projects, we need to go ahead and solidify any sort of work. Once we have the bids in place. As you recall, we originally had thought the tuck pointing was going to be closer to $150,000. That's now at about $100,000 for that work to be done. The drainage grates and exterior doors, I don't recall the exact amount, but certainly we would get that to you. But essentially what we were looking for is just some sort of guidance from the board on what you're thinking. Certainly I could, as the administrative team, there are two sides to this thing. One, these needs will not go away. And the further we put some of these things out, the more expensive they may get. But at the same time, we are also now being very mindful of what COVID-19 will have on our potential revenues in the future. I don't want to be an alarmist, but it's really just more of a fear of the unknown more than anything. And so, to expend, say, $150,000 to do the Eisenhower tuck pointing and the drainage grates, again, we prioritize them as our highest needs. But again, the other side of this thing is, given the unknown, should we kind of hold this under our hat at this time and just wait and see until we have a better idea of what's happening with school finance for next school year and the years then thereafter. Again, at this point we planned on holding tight, but if there was a preponderance of support of the board to have us move forward, certainly we would be open to that as well. So Amy, I guess I don't know how you'd like us to, I guess we're really just asking the question, should we consider to continue to move forward with some of these, or should we hold tight?
Okay, to begin discussion, can I have a motion to begin discussion?
Motion to begin discussion on long-range facility needs.
Second. It's Janet.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Ms. Schultz, to begin discussion on long-range facility. So, Mr. Helmer, do you want to start off since
Sure.
you made the motion?
I think what we need from the board is just kind of a consensus. Do we want to, and we've talked about this before, do we want to agree to spend $500,000, spend $5 million, or $50,000, or nothing? And I think we kind of have to come up with a number to give Joe and the team then, in my personal opinion, then they know what they can play with and they can tick off the top 3 or 4 things on here. Because if we say it's $500,000 and we can't do any asphalt for that, then clearly all that's out. But I mean, we can do that, or I think we can maybe go through here and look at priority 1 for each school and come to an agreement of, yes, as a board, we think this is a priority. So I had mentioned in previous meetings, I don't believe that asphalt and creating more meeting spaces is that important to me. I think the big thing for me is safety and education. And there isn't really a lot of education here, so the big stuff for me is safety. So the 2 that jump out at me are like the replacing drainage grates at Elmwood and the exterior doors. But then I think there's some of the maintenance for those retention ponds that I don't think that we fully understand, that maybe the administration can weigh in a little bit more on that and what their priorities are. But I guess, Amy, I'd like some guidance from you of how you think we should proceed. If we should look at $300,000 as a comfortable number for us, and then look at some of the ideas that they come back with on quotes, and then have us determine what we want to do from there.
Yeah, I guess my feeling on this is I did want to set a long-range facility kind of budget amount that we want to move forward with per year, and have that built into the budget for the next 5 years as we're projecting. This particular projects looks like they are on not necessarily what we budgeted for this year, but more on any surplus that we have. So I guess I would move forward with putting some of these items into the 2020-21 budget and budgeting for those, with the concern that, I guess my concern would be that any surplus we have this year we may need for educating our students next year. So I am in support of building it into the budgets for the future years and using and earmarking that for those particular, but not necessarily the surplus money.
So I think when we met at Orchard Lane, we said there was a $700,000 surplus, and we approved doing the back parking lot, which leaves us with a certain amount of money that I think I'm not supposed to say. So I don't know. Are we discussing? You're saying you don't want to earmark any of that money because of this obviously new situation that we find ourselves in, and potentially needing to save that surplus in our fund balance in case we need it for next school year.
Yeah, I guess I would advocate for setting a dollar amount that we're going to, in our proposed budgets for the next 5 years, which we should be seeing from administration in June, to say, okay, about 300,000 of that, of our budget, we want to put towards long-range facility, but I'm just giving an example of a number, and then putting these projects, prioritizing the projects into the next year's budget. Because this year budget, I believe we did not set aside anything for long-range facilities.
That's correct.
So, and then I think you had mentioned when we met at Orchard Lane, then let's say we pick $300,000, then that money would funnel into the Fund 41 and we would pull from there then for facilities projects.
That would be my preference, yes, that we would specifically set aside money out of our regular budget for our long-range facility, and then budget accordingly with that, knowing that that's earmarked for that.
I would agree with that.
So out of the surplus that we had from last school year, at the end of last school year, we used part of that now for the Orchard Lane parking lot pavement, and then the remainder of what's left of that surplus from the close of last year, we will not spend that now, is what you're saying, for any other maintenance projects for the summer of 2020. We're going to hold on to that in case. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's just my opinion, yeah. That we put it.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah. And put it in fund balance if an emergency comes up. Yes. You know, we definitely need to address
I
that.
agree. I totally agree with you. So okay. Yes, I just want to make sure I understood correctly.
Okay.
This is Susan. I just wanted to weigh in. Sorry. So my concern is that I'm certain we're going to have some kind of financial impact from what's going on with COVID-19. So we can certainly put like earmarks, but how do we prevent any of the work from going forward until we know where we stand financially?
Well, when we approve our final budget, it usually tends to be October. We should have a very good, hopefully, understanding of where our revenue limit is and what our financial looks like for next year.
Yeah, and then I guess my question is, any of the spending? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, you know, one thing that we could do is that, you know, any projected work, you know, so first of all, we would budget the amount, right, for budgeting purposes and projection purposes. I think that's certainly very important. But I think as far as any capital type spending, I think we're going to have to just kind of hold tight, which is what I've directed, you know, Patrick and others to do. For any significant, you know, expenditures, we need to be very careful of, you know, of how and what we're going to do. And so you know, I guess what we would do is, you know, let's put these amounts in the budget for, again, the two reasons I mentioned, and that we certainly would not move forward with any of these capital projects until we had a much better idea whether it's October. You know, I'm also hearing, you know, possibly not knowing anything until like as late as January for next year. So, you know, I think, I guess what I'm hearing is we would not move forward with these projects this summer for sure, which is, again, another important piece for us to have. And then, you know, should we consider doing something, we would wait until we had some solidified numbers from the state regarding our revenue, and then we would just kind of factor these projects in as best we could. You know, tuck pointing can possibly be done during the school day, you know, as long as they're not causing a lot of noise. You know, the drainage grates and exterior doors, again, we think that's something we could kind of do, you know, throughout the school year. So, you know, certainly it would be kind of a wait and see approach before we expended any sort of major dollars for these types of items, at least from our perspective at this point.
Thanks for that clarification.
Any other discussion?
Joe, there was some discussion on the drainage on some of the retention ponds, and I think there was some concern if we didn't do something on a few of them that we could be in some violations or we could end up having some major issues. Can we just get clarity that that's not the case by not doing that work? And then also the drainage grate on the entrance of Elmwood, it sounded like that was a major safety issue in terms of a car being possibly able to fall through that. So I guess my concern is I don't want to block that if you guys have the ability to do that within your budget. So if you guys can do that within your current maintenance budget and that's something that needs to be done, I just don't want the board to give you guys direction.
Yeah, so most certainly, you know, there are some things, Mitch, that we are doing to address some of the minor needs in working with the city. And so they are being very cooperative with us, which is nice. So as long as we're not, as long as we've identified kind of a general plan of where we're at, as long as we start, you know, we're progressively addressing certain issues along the way. Now, again, maybe not the full, say, $50,000 worth of work for the drainage grates, but you know, certainly we want to make sure that that we will certainly do that, and we'll get verification of that, and we'll circle back with you again. But I do believe we have opportunity to kind of possibly weather this storm at this point, but we'll confirm for sure.
Okay.
And if not, if we are able to, then if we need to prioritize it within our current budget and not, you know, exceed our current budget numbers and try and make it happen within our current budget, certainly we will try our best to do that, should we need to.
Thanks.
Do we want to take a formal vote?
I believe we've given our direction. Do we need to take a formal vote?
I just, this is Jeffrey. I just want to clarify. So we are moving forward with the Orchard Lane, taking care of the drainage issue there, that we are still within compliance and that we're able to get that done. That's what we're going forward. And then everything else is going to be done on a very conservative and as needed basis, correct?
That's how we understand it as the administrative team at this point.
Yeah, there's no actual vote here, so it's just discussion and presentation. So there's nothing to vote on, I don't think.
And if, you know, the board does, you know, if there's some sort of dissension amongst you all, we can certainly bring this back for action at the next meeting. But based off of what we're hearing, you know, we'll set aside dollars in the budget, Patrick, Fund 41. We'll bring forth, you know, $300,000, but the board can determine and set an amount, you know, that they would want, you know, as we move forward through the budgeting process. Then meanwhile, we just will hold tight on these other issues until we know more from the state with regards to funding. And then we'll follow up with some of the specifics with the Elmwood drainage grates. So that's our understanding. And so I guess at this point, I would ask Amy if there is some sort of dissension, we'd be happy to bring this to a vote at the next meeting.
Is there any interest to bring this back up at the next meeting for a vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item B, which is discussion of the 2020-21 busing considerations.
So as we've been looking at ways to find efficiencies within our budget, as has been directed by the board, this is one item that we wanted to check in with the board on that we have been discussing internally with regards to how we offer busing in the district. We are not asking for any sort of decision tonight, but we will be asking for a decision sometime in the next couple of board meetings as we're able to provide you more details. I do not have all the details tonight, but I do at least want to, the point is I want to at least bring you up to speed on what we will be bringing forth for the board to consider for next school year. So one of the things that we can do that could have a decent impact on our budget as far as expenses is that of a couple different things to do with our transportation service. One of the things that we could do that would have, that could bring in, you know, what could be a couple hundred to possibly more thousands of dollars in savings is by moving to a three-tiered system for our buses, which is what typically is the most efficient way to run your buses and get, you know, bad pun here, most mileage out of it. And so what this would entail, and as some of you may recall, and I don't know exactly how many years back, we did run a three-tiered system where Eisenhower and West were on two different schedules, and then all of the elementary schools were on the same schedule. So we had essentially three different start and three different end times in the district. Because of the work that we've done with college and career readiness, because of all the work that we've done in collaborating our courses between Ike and West and some of the post-secondary partners, as well as work with like our Construction 3 class, it was critical that we move to a uniformed start and end time for our secondary schools. And we would continue to recommend that those stay the same for all the reasons that we've mentioned, you know, now and before, and the success that we are experiencing as a result of moving to that. So what would essentially happen is, in order for us to move forward to this three-tiered system, and again, I don't have the specific end and start or start and end times now, but it would mean that your two secondary schools would likely stay at the same time, which is starting at 7:30 and ending at 3. You would then have two schools, two of your 4 elementary schools, and probably one large and one small elementary school. So if we had to couple them, the likelihood would be you would have Regan and Poplar Creek starting at the same time, and then you would have Elmwood and Orchard Lane starting at the same time because of the geography and, again, maximizing opportunity for those buses. And so it would mean that, again, you would have same start and end time for secondary schools, same start and end time for one of your large elementary and one of your small elementaries, and then a third start and end time for one of your large and one of your small elementaries. So some of the things that are impacted as a result of this are severalfold. One, because of this change, it would certainly impact the private schools' start and end times. Just like it did when we went from 3 tiers to 2 tiers, it impacted their pickup and drop-off times as well, because we are required to provide transportation for private schools within the school district and others nearing us. And in most cases, we are able to do a private parent agreement. And so really the only 2 schools that likely would be impacted would be Holy Apostles and Star of Bethlehem, located here in New Berlin. The other thing that it would impact would be, your pickup and your drop-off times. Your drop-off times now would be getting later for, again, one of your large elementary and one elementary school. What that means is when you're getting closer to daylight savings time, you may experience kids being dropped off at a later time. Now, one of the reasons, as we have brought this to the board previously to consider, and now that we've got at least 3 new board members within the last couple of years, it's good to kind of re-bring this conversation up. But there is some concern has been voiced in the past about having students being dropped off at a time where you don't have full daylight. You still have daylight, but you have more like this twilight, and so some have considered that what could be a safety issue. Now, there are no state regulations related to times and of when you can and can't drop kids off. Obviously, we want to be aware of that. But as you are aware, we did at one point have much later drop-offs than we do now. The reason why that would have to occur is because simply we just need to make sure we have enough time for our buses to go from the secondaries to that first group of elementaries and then to that third group of elementaries. And so again, there are some unintended consequences that could occur. But again, we've been asked to bring solutions to the board at a quarterly, quarterly as we look to make some of these adjustments. And this is one of those things where certainly could have a decent impact on expenses in transportation. And so again, at this point, I don't have all the details. It was really for your information. Certainly if the board, we plan on bringing the specific start and end time at one of the next couple meetings. And then we also plan on bringing the potential savings as a result of doing this. There is also then a third piece that could happen that's separate from just moving to a 3-tiered system that we will bring to the board as well, which we don't have the details right now. But that is so currently we do door pickups for kindergartners, I believe, and I don't believe first graders, so I think it's just kindergartners. And for everybody in 1st through 12th grade, they do the nearest corner. So another thing that we could do as we looked at our bus contract and our agreement is other districts do have neighborhood pickups. So rather than, so I think of like my neighborhood, I have a corner lot, so my kids were actually able to get picked up at the corner. But instead of maybe being picked up at this corner, they have to walk an extra block to get to a different neighborhood pickup and drop-off point. Again, what this would do, and I don't think it's probably as much savings by doing some of this, but it certainly would provide some efficiency and reduce some of our costs. So that is also something we plan on bringing to the board for the board's consideration. That then at that point wouldn't necessarily interrupt all the things mentioned with the 3-tiered system. It would not impact the private schools, but it certainly could cause disruption for families and students having to walk a little further than they typically would. If we did do these neighborhood type pickups, we would still recommend doing the door pickups for our kindergartners and or first graders if we currently are doing those. So again, mainly for your information, should you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or mainly additional questions, I can certainly field some now. I probably will not have the answer, but get them to us and we'll try and get that information as we bring forth this presentation to the board. Again, it's pending us getting the information that we've requested, and we will be bringing that again at one of your next 2 meetings, of which we're going to need a decision made, because based on the decision that the board makes, we will then enter into those parameters into our routing software that we plan on starting the implementation of as soon as school ends, and so that we would have those routes started and at least funneled through that software sometime in mid to late June, give or take. So I guess Yes, Amy, I guess I'd ask at this point how what else you need at this point from us.
If there are any questions or discussion, can someone please make a motion to begin that?
Sure, this is Kate. I'll make a motion to begin discussion on the specialing options.
Second, Mitch Helmer.
I have a motion by Ms. Unger, a second by Mr. Helmer to begin discussion.
So I think the biggest thing that you didn't mention as a concern of the first option of going to the 3-tiered systems is the impact to the parent schedules. Having school start at 9:30 seems like it would be a huge burden for families and really force a lot of people to pay for before school care that are not currently. The other question or comment I have is you're talking as if we have to choose one of these options. Can you explain again, because I think we discussed this in closed session last time, where this is coming from and what is the driver for even considering any options at this point?
So yes, the one point of clarification, Kate, that I want to make is that we've not determined when the third tier start time would be. You mentioned 9:30. I want to clarify that that's not been solidified. I don't think it'd be that late.
Okay.
I think it'd be somewhere closer to where we were when we did this again several years back. And forgive me for my memory here, but I thought for some reason we started at like 9:05 a.m. At all of our elementaries at that time. Certainly, yes, we would concur that there could be an impact on families. And as far as the rationale of bringing this forth to the board is we have been asked to bring forth discussion items to help continue to balance future budgets. And so this is one of the reasons why we're bringing this is for the board to consider, based off of the direction I received from the board via my evaluation. And so hence why we're bringing this at this point, like we have with some other items, and making adjustments to the budget for future years.
This is Chrislyn. I'm also concerned about a later start time and the effect that it'll have on especially working parents. And even a 9 o'clock start time for parents, I think would really hamper their ability to get to work on time and again, cause a trigger for additional childcare costs for them, which I think would be a negative downfall of this proposal. I also think that when you're talking about elementary school kids, you're also talking about a lot of kids who have extracurricular involvement after school. And if school doesn't end until 4 or 4:30, then they will have probably far more limited opportunities to have involvement in extracurricular activities because it'll run into the dinner hour for most families. So I don't really want to do that to families either. And I think that the idea of having possibly neighborhood pickups is far more sustainable and less detrimental to families. But I think that the tiered start time would really disadvantage half of the elementary schools in our district, not the other half because they could maintain their regular time. But I also don't think that that's fair. It seems arbitrary and unfair to impose a change on half of the elementary schools and not all of the elementary schools. And frankly, I wouldn't like it being imposed on all the elementary schools either. So I'm not sure that that's a sound way to deal with a budget downfall. I mean, I think that the question we have to ask is, sure, we can do it, but should we do it? It doesn't seem like we should to me.
Yeah, and this is Ms. Crosby. I agree in the fact that when we did have this in the past, we did not have that extra time built into our day where, which I like having the extra time. So the flex time in the high school and middle school, and then more, intervention time for the elementary. So students were actually, I believe when my daughter was in kindergarten, it was 9 to 3:35. So she was still getting off at a relatively, I would say not normal, but with lighting and everything. And then I agree with the with having access to after school activities, a lot of maybe non school district type activities, they could start anywhere between 4 and 4:30 in the afternoon, and parents are already trying to get their kids there. So I am not in support of a 3-tiered system, mainly because I want to maintain that extra time we have in our school day, but would not feel comfortable having kids stay past 3:30 in a building. And I think for extracurricular, but then also for safety issues when the when the sun is not up and as much in the winter months. So I would not agree to move forward with a tiered system. But I would be good with the neighborhood pickup as looking at a proposal for that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the neighborhood pickup seems like a better option, especially, I think in most areas that would be probably asking kids to go only a block or two further than where they're going currently. And even possibly, I know you talked about having kindergarten maintain their at-home pickup, but I know a parent has to come and get the kindergartner at the end of the day. So if they are then coming to get them from the neighborhood pickup, then that seems like it could even be a reasonable option.
Joe, Mitch here. I guess I had a couple of questions. Right now, our elementary schools go to 335. Elmbrook goes to 345. Whitnall is a little bit before us, and Muskego goes to 345. So do you know if Elmbrook runs a 3-tiered system like this? I know Muskego does. I didn't know if Elmbrook did.
I'd have to check. And again,
Okay.
that's something that we're also gathering as well as, comparable districts and what their start and end times are. We do have certainly a longer school day than other districts, so that does put us, as Amy mentioned, at a bit of a difference. We certainly would not recommend any change to the length of day for all the reasons that Amy mentioned. And again, we're not necessarily making a recommendation here. All we're trying to do is just bring options to the board to consider for future, budget situations. So, but Mitch, yeah, if you could just send me an email with those questions as far as start and end times and anything else you would need, just let us know, and we'll be happy to bring that.
Yeah, because I guess my other concern is we spend more than all these other school districts on busing, and I'm guessing it's probably because of these two policies that we're talking about, the 3-tiered. So Muskego spends $500,000 less than we do. So that means for all the money that they're getting from the state and their local taxpayers, they're putting $500,000 more into education than us because we're putting it into busing. And I guess that's my biggest concern. I'm really glad you brought us some proposals. I think it's good that we get a chance to look at the 3-tiered start time as well as some of the community pickup stuff. The other thing too on the schools, I think it would make more sense to do Elmwood and Orchard Lane on opposite times because they're the closest. So you do Elmwood and Poplar Creek as either the first or the second, and then Regan and Orchard Lane.
So just one comment on comparing to other districts. I think because we are unique in having really 2 sets of buildings, elementary and secondary, versus 3, elementary, middle school, high school, that I think changes the impact of a 3-tiered system on our district versus Muskego or Brookfield, because like Chrislyn said, splitting it between 2 elementary schools and 2 elementary schools arbitrarily divided versus saying elementary, middle school, high school as the 3 tiers kind of makes a difference to families.
Yeah, I guess, Kate, I would echo those sentiments that, to do a true apples to apples comparison is not really fair. There are many variables, and one of them does include the fact that, if we had separate middle schools, like it'd be totally different, where we don't have that. And again, I'm not suggesting a middle school here. Please, just want to point that out for the record. But I am just, there are things that make it unique. The majority of our, we actually have to bus every kid in New Berlin. You know, I'm not sure that every other district has to do that compared to us because of the lack of sidewalks in our community. So again, there are differences for sure where we just can't necessarily compare ourselves in an apples to apples manner. But again, I certainly appreciate the commentary thus far.
One more quick thing. Can we also look at possibly pushing back the elementary schools like 5 minutes? Would that buy you more time to get more full buses and keep the two-tiered system? That would give you more time to run your high school routes before they have to go to the elementary, and vice versa when they're dropping off.
Yeah, I mean, I think still at that point, you know, we're talking pennies on the dollar versus, and if at all, versus, you know, again, what we see as a substantial budgetary impact. But again, you understand the disruption as well. So, and that's why, you know, again, we're bringing this to you now so that because of the implications that it certainly has.
Joe, when you come back with more information on the neighborhood pickups, would you be able to provide information, like, for example, my son runs bus 5 to Regan, and I don't know, I'm going to just guess, let's say there's 25 stops on that route. Instead, there would be 8 or something like that, so that we can kind of get a good handle on like how far a neighborhood stop might be.
We will try to do our best on that. You know, I may not be able to bring it for every school. So maybe I could just start with like an Orchard Lane or a Poplar Creek that has just kind of a smaller geography of you know, what that could look like, say, there. Or maybe even like your Elmwood, which has more subdivisions, you know, as far as actual subdivisions, where, you know, if you head out to Reagan, now you're not talking as many subdivisions per se.
Yeah, I think PC and Reagan would be a little more difficult because obviously as you get up more on the west side, there aren't going to be as many gathering points, or at least ones that kids can get to safely, because some of those roads don't even have shoulders.
Exactly. So,
okay, I don't think it has to be everything, but maybe if you could pick, you know, one more rural route and one more suburban route, and just kind of give us a picture of what it looks like now and what it could look like if we did a neighborhood pickup.
Sure, we will do our best to see what we can do to bring this in.
Hey, Joe, nice job in trying to find at least something creative in the money saving aspect here, even if we don't go with it 100%. Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more information as well as far as the neighborhood pickup, and move forward.
Yeah, and you know, again, we're bringing this forward as, you know, one of these things where it's not necessarily an impact on education and student learning. You know, one could argue that, of course, with a later start time or staying in school later. So again, we've tried working within those parameters that were asked by the board. Again, not necessarily recommending it, but bringing these options has been requested. So I appreciate that, Jeff.
All right, are we good to move on and look at this when there's more information, more details?
And Amy, our goal is to bring it to the next meeting if I have as much of it as, you know, basically 95% of the info. Otherwise, it will likely be the second meeting in May, which is the Tuesday after Memorial Day.
And if there's any other information that you would need, please, you know, do let Joe know via email prior to that May meeting. All right, item C on our agenda is to discuss approved policy 6235 for fund balance.
So again, this is now actually for approval tonight. There was a first read at the previous board meeting. This policy was recommended by the Finance Committee and Finance Committee Chair, and there's minimal change in the policy, really just seeking some clarification and some consistency and who we use for, you know, whether is it the CFO or the superintendent or their designee. And so with that, we would recommend approval of the fund balance policy as presented.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, this is Chrislyn Wondercheck. I move that we approve policy, 6235 fund balance as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Mitch Helmer, second.
So a motion by Ms. Wondercheck, second by Mr. Helmer to approve policy 6235. Any discussion? I just want to say, thank you to the Finance Committee for bringing this forward and for your recommendation. This is definitely something that is, helpful in these committees to have a little bit more depth in the committee level and then bringing those recommendations forward to the board. So I guess if there's no further discussion, we'll take a roll call vote.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Yes.
Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Yes.
Mr. Kurth.
Yes.
Ms. Manley.
Yes.
Ms. Schultz.
Yes.
Ms. Unger.
Yes.
Motion passes. That brings us to item D, which is the first read of the Athletics and Activities Code of Conduct.
Yeah, so we are actually bringing this to the school board, because it's a code of conduct, we typically wouldn't have necessarily a first or second read. We are recommending that we follow your typical procedure, though, by having this as a first read. And it's actually even the first read isn't even in policy necessarily, but nonetheless, we do annual updates of all of our handbooks, and the code of conduct is one of those things that we would include in our athletics and activities handbooks. And we wanted to make sure that we got approval from the board before we entered into the next school year. I'm not going to get into all the details of the suggestions being made, but they have been recommended by the board legal counsel, and certainly something that, again, we highly would encourage you to approve based on just some instances that we've had. And I think this would help shore up some of the questions that have arisen over the course of the last several years. And so with that, again, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to email them to me directly. I will then get responses as needed. But again, this was something that had been requested by the board, again, and brought forth by your legal counsel. So again, should anybody in the public have any questions, it has been posted, or Diana will post it to the public record. Diana, is it posted?
It is not.
Yeah, so maybe we can go ahead and include that, in the public record after the meeting. Because of the level of detail, again, for the sake of time, I prefer not to. But again, these are all things that had been requested and suggested by your legal counsel. So again, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please email them to me.
Okay, so like Mr. Garza said, if you have any questions or concerns regarding the code of conduct, send those, and we will address them at the next meeting, which we will be looking for approval. Moving on.
Ms. Crosby, this is Chrislyn Wondercheck. I would like to move that we amend the agenda to include a discussion of the COVID-19 update from the superintendent. I know you referenced that earlier in the agenda when I wanted to ask some questions, and so that was my motion.
Do I have a second?
Yes, this is Kate. Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button. I will second.
I have a motion by Ms. Wondercheck, a second by Ms. Unger to amend the agenda tonight to add an item for discussion of the COVID-19 update. This does require a 2/3 vote, so to add to the agenda. So Ms. Hanson, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Ms. Wondercheck,
Yes.
Ms. Unger,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer,
Yes.
Mr. Kurth,
Yes.
Ms. Manley,
Yes.
Ms. Schultz.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll begin discussion on the COVID-19 update.
This is Chrislyn Wondercheck. I just had a few questions for Mr. Garza. Regarding you were talking about spring sports and making some provision for seniors being allowed to participate, which I think is great. My only question on that is, do we have, I know that when we run sports, all sports programs, we have to have insurance coverage for them to use our buildings and that type of thing. So my question is there any carve out in our insurance coverage that would not cover those seniors as not being enrolled students in our programs if they participated in a spring sport after they had graduated and they got hurt or something like that? Have we already looked into that, or is that something we need to look into?
So as mentioned when I provided that update, there are still many questions unanswered at this time, and that would be one of them.
Okay, so you'll get some guidance for us on that, just to make sure that we are not having kind of exposure for that if the graduating seniors participate, which I want to emphasize, I want to happen. I want them to be able to do that, but I just want to make sure that we cover our insurance needs. And my guess is that insurance carriers are going to have to make some exceptions to policies for these types of situations because we're all in the same boat.
We will certainly confirm. Sure.
Thank you. Another question that I had was regarding on April 15th, it was, I believe, the state treasurer of the state of Wisconsin announced that a special distribution of $5.25 million was going to be distributed to school districts to help fund additional expenses related to distance learning. Do we know how much will be distributed to New Berlin? And if we don't know that, when will we know? And what needs do we have in that regard, Joe?
So we do not know at this time, first of all, how those dollars will be distributed. So therefore we don't know then necessarily how much we are eligible for. We are keeping track of our costs and savings at a high level based on what we know at this time. So yes, Patrick, for example, already has the accounting set up for as we experience added expenditures as a result of our response. We've got that set up, and we're working with our administrators to continue to maintain that. But as mentioned previously, it's been once the dollars have been determined to be how they would be distributed and how much what they're basing it off of. Again, that's all still up in the air, and we wouldn't know that. We don't know that at this time. But certainly, as soon as we get some direction from the state, you'll be the first to know for sure.
And regarding that special distribution, Joe, do you know if it's something we are going to have to apply for, or is this something that all districts are just going to get? I mean, do we know anything about that?
We do not at this time. My guess is there's a likelihood that we would have to apply. They would streamline an application to make it as user-friendly as possible. And the likelihood is that they would probably keep things very broad and general, just like they did with the CARES Act dollars, to ensure that there was flexibility in those dollars being received and how they're spent.
Thank you. And then I had one more question about you're mentioning that we needed to apply for the waiver from DPI on instructional hours. I don't know what that means. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so as a result of what's occurred, so we actually are required to meet a minimum level of expectation for instructional minutes. We typically, in a given school year, like even last year when I think we missed 5 or 6 days, we would never have needed to apply for a waiver like other districts did last year because of the amount of instructional minutes we have built in to our regular school day and to our school calendar. But because of the possible challenges that could occur out there of how we're delivering this amended instruction and amended learning, the DPI has put together an amended waiver that they are recommending and others are recommending that we apply for to offset. While we don't think we would be shy the instructional minutes based on the work that we're doing, because again, we're putting together 5 days worth of work. We're going through our entire calendar as we projected, and because of all the days that we have built in, we think we're covered. But this is a safeguard to ensure that should we get challenged, I don't know by who, that we have this to cover us and get the approval from DPI. And essentially, as mentioned, like even with the previous application that I mentioned regarding application for dollars, DPI has mainstreamed the waiver and essentially are automatically approving them and rubber stamping them. I don't think they would tell you that, but essentially that's kind of what's happening. So again, I certainly we could move forward without going forward with that. We would not recommend that. Again, just not knowing what could happen as a result of this, we'd rather have that as protection instead, just to make sure.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I completely agree that I think the conservative approach on that, assuming that we're not, that we need a backup plan is probably a great idea. Is there one further question on that though? Is there any way that we could deliver our instruction which would make the waiver less likely that we need to get? And what I mean by that is I got a question from a taxpayer who was asking, and a parent who was asking, why are we not just running a schedule like we did throughout the school day and just doing Google Classroom for every period, and every teacher would teach like they usually would at the same time, the same period. And I didn't know the answer to that. My assumption was that method was probably evaluated and dismissed for some reason. But my question is, would we avoid the need for something like this waiver if the method of delivery was different, or would that not matter?
We don't believe that would matter because it's still not face-to-face, or truly face-to-face, first off. And then secondly, yeah, we did find that that's just not feasible. And I think other districts would concur with that. Some are doing some of that to a certain degree, but certainly not like a minute per minute, true digital learning. And again, it was certainly not feasible for us to do so.
And just to follow up so that I can answer this person, because I feel like I owe him an answer. It's not feasible because of the technical challenges required for totally making that. I mean, I'm trying to figure that out because I don't know how this all works or how that would even work.
Well, so really what it boils down to is equal access. And so we've been trying to be as flexible as possible, trying to meet the independent needs of all of our students. Some may have the luxury of having both parents at home where they can monitor their students minute by minute and supporting them, because again, just because I have a teacher on the screen doesn't mean I have a 5 or 6 year old that could actually pay attention to it. So you still need to have an adult, supporting those kids. And with the fact that we do have essential workers, including our own staff members that and others, that are healthcare workers or others that just, we got both parents. We just heard from privilege of the floor that they can't even maintain the current schedule as it is with the amount of flexibility we have. So it boils down to flexibility and equal access.
Sure, that helps me understand it, Joe. I appreciate that. And as an essential worker myself, I can tell you it's very difficult to manage on my end, especially a kid in special ed. So.
Yeah, that's very understandable for sure.
All right, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
I have one quick one. So you talked a lot about graduation for seniors. What about our 6th graders? I know that there's promotion ceremonies that usually happen. Are those entirely planned by the Holman schools? I know our Holman school at Regan is looking at, doing some alternatives over the summer, but just curious if any of that was planned by the school and if the schools are planning on doing anything for the 6th grade classes.
Yeah, that's still a work in progress. Just because we know that, put it this way, it's a work in progress. I think it's something that we're considering. We're considering. We have to put it this way. We haven't canceled them yet, but at the same time, we don't know exactly what and to what degree we will have coordinated for our sixth graders.
Okay.
But
thanks.
we will start. That's on our radar, and I think thanks for bringing that up. And we hope to have we really wanted to focus on the bigger events like the 2020 graduates on the front end, and that moving to the sixth graders and others, kind of like we had to with junior prom too. Juniors, and, while we haven't canceled, we have an alternative date, but who knows if we'll even have that. So something again that we'll continue to look at.
And Joe, this is Chrislyn again. I'm sorry, I did forget. I had one other question about ESY for kids with disabilities. I know you said there's going to be more information forthcoming about that. So I respect the fact that you may not have an answer on this, but have you guys given thought to what that would look like, whether it would just be one site in our district, or how would that be managed? Because I know it's different for all these kids and what they need.
Yeah, that's something that I certainly don't have the answer to at this time, but it is certainly something that we are, so our efforts have, really been focusing on closing out this school year. Again, even as of last Friday, our teachers did a lot of work throughout the day for their own professional learning and training as to how we would move forward with the rest of the year. They're going to continue with that. Our next phase then would be, what are we doing with summer school, including ESY? And then the next phase in is, what the heck are we going to do come next school year? Because we're already, please don't quote me on this, but there's a lot of conversation already being tossed around that we could essentially start with a virtual school even coming into as late as next fall. So those are all the things that we're planning, but unfortunately, we're just not quite to that next phase of planning as we're focusing on closing out the rest of the current school year. But again, yes, we will provide all those details as soon as we have them.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
This is Ms. Crosby. I just had one quick question too. So you mentioned the summer school program, and totally understandable that we don't have a plan moving forward. But did I hear correctly that all school districts in Wisconsin are only going to be able to count 7 through 12 on their revenue limit?
As of right now, that's the rule.
Okay.
And so there was a hearing last week, Thursday, on making an emergency change to that rule. And what that would do is it would, first of all, they have the public hearing, and then they have to put together a draft order that would then actually go directly to the governor. So there would be no legislators involved because of the emergency nature of it. And then the governor would determine whether there would be flexibility or not. So there is still a possibility that we could get funding K through 6, which again currently does not exist. Should the governor sign off on this emergency one-time opportunity? I think these are unique times. I don't think it's something that they would necessarily do ongoing, but that they could do it as a stopgap yet this year, or try to keep people whole with a 3-year rolling average or something with the hold harmless. So there's different ways that they may be able to address this if we can't. Our biggest concern is, yes, it's the finance, but it's also how do we best meet the needs of our kids to prepare them to start next school year, and how are we going to do that, in this whole digital approach, where we typically would be able to have these kids in our classrooms for 6 or 7 weeks in the summer, to do the literacy and math, shortcomings, and so those are some of the things. But yeah, the secondary piece is what then happens to that lost revenue. And so again, that emergency order is in process. But again, I do also understand that there's other conversations of how they may adjust the revenue limit formula like for example, again, doing something with hold harmless, possibly, where there would be no impact on districts as a result of this.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Moving on, item E on our agenda is future meeting and dates. Our next meeting will be held on May 11th. It'll be virtual beginning at 6:30. May 26th, which is the Tuesday, I believe, the day that the orders had lifted, potentially meeting in the West Commons. Is that correct, or are we still virtual at that point?
That's to be determined.
Okay, and then June 8th as well. We do have some closed session items that we need to address, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn into closed session.
Amy, I'm sorry, this is Chrislyn. I just wanted to also toss in there that I think that we'd like to have a finance committee meeting on that May 26th date, keeping in our regular schedule of the second meeting of the month at 5:30.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Also, there's a personnel meeting this Wednesday.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I, Jeffrey Kurth, move that we move into closed session pursuant to 19.85 to discuss hold on, where am I at? I lost it. The approval of closed session minutes of April 15th, B, employment performance compensation matters pertaining to staff, and C, negotiations.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by, sorry, I need a second.
This is Janet, second.
Second by Ms. Schultz. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth?
Yes.
Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
Mr. Helmer?
Yes.
Ms. Manley?
Yes.
Ms. Unger?
Yes.
And Ms. Wondrachek?
Yes.
So we will be moving into closed session. We will return to open session if there are items that we need to vote on, approximately 30 minutes from now.
Amy, can we have like a 3-minute break?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
We do a quick roll call.
Yeah, let's see here. Amy, are you back on?
Yep, I'm on.
Okay. All right, so I got Miss Crosby. Let me mark somebody here. All right, Mr. Helmer? Nope. Mr. Kurth?
Yep.
Miss Manley?
Yes.
Miss Schultz?
Yes.
Ms. Unger?
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck?
Yes.
Oh, there she's there. And Mr. Helmer, are you on? I see you're in, but I don't hear you. Mr. Helmer?
I think he'd be okay if we went forward.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 9:25 and we are returning from closed session into open session. We have one action item to discuss from closed session. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the employee services report as presented.
Second, Jeffrey.
I have a motion by Ms. Unger, a second by Mr. Kurth. Any discussion? Diana, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Kurth?
Yes.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
Let's see, Mr. Helmer? Ms. Manley?
Yes.
Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck?
Yes.
Motion passes. That brings us to adjourning. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Ms. Manley to adjourn. Again, please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth?
Yes.
Ms. Manley?
Yes.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
I'll try Mr. Helmer again.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
Ms. Unger?
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck?
Yes.
Motion passes, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.